Welcome to the Respectful Divorce Podcast. If you're considering divorce, it's important to know that you have options for how you divorce. On the Respectful Divorce Podcast, we explore those options and provide advice from divorce professionals. I'm your host, Tim Crouch, and today we're talking with Texas collaborative divorce attorney Richard Shannon with Shannon Family Law in Austin. Richard, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be with you, Tim.
So, divorce. Yeah, never easy in any circumstance, but the litigation process in Texas and in the Austin area, what's it like to go through a litigated divorce in your area?
Yes, well, families who have dysfunction in the family relationship, whether married or not, will wind up oftentimes in the divorce courts, because if there's a marital relationship and they want to end it, they must get an order from a judge. There's no way around getting a judge to sign an order. The question is, what's the pathway to get to that order? If a couple is unmarried, and increasingly we have over 30% of children are in families where the couple is not married. But if they're separating, they also need to go to court to get an order with respect to how the two of them are going to manage the children. The Constitution and the statutes of the state provide a court system, and we have an open court system, and it's a right of every citizen to go to court. So when conflicts come up in families, the default is, I guess I have to go to court to get a judge to do something. And increasingly, we're finding that as many as 60 to 65% of divorce cases and custody cases have at least one party without a lawyer. Oftentimes, though, both sides will get a lawyer. Now, the system is set up to be adversarial. Unfortunately, there's a long history behind that, and the history explains how we got into what's an adversarial system. The problem with adversarial is that it assumes that the parties in the lawsuit are enemies. And the last thing parents want and the last thing their children need is for the parents to be enemies. So the adversarial system is essentially a warfare of words, with or without an attorney. Some think the reason so many people are now going to court without a lawyer is because they believe that the lawyers become part of the problem rather than part of the solution. Why? Because the law schools train lawyers to be advocates in an adversarial system. It was 25 years ago that a fellow named Stu Webb, who was a family law divorce attorney, got sick and tired of seeing the damage done to families by adversarial litigation, and he was a participant in it. But his consciousness told him, this is not right. This does harm to families. There's got to be a better way. In adversarial litigation, because people think it's warfare and there's something to lose, it's what some people call a zero-sum game. That a zero-sum game means if one has a win, the other has a loss, and nobody wants to lose. And because people fear loss, especially in the precious relationships between parent and child, and sometimes it has to do with money, it brings out the worst side of people. People become vicious. lawyers can become vicious. Lawyers can also play a game of let's you and her or him fight so we can make money. All of which is not good for the family and not good for the legal profession and reputation of lawyers. I once read a study that indicated that in the general public, how do you regard lawyers? And it was a very interesting response. If you were thinking about the other party's lawyer, you thought they were lower than a used car salesman. Hopefully, you're not a used car salesman listening to this, but unfortunately, that was the metaphor that was used. On the other hand, if they ask about their lawyer, oh, well, my lawyer walks on water because they're fighting for me. So what did Stu Webb come up with? He said, look, having this war of words, having this zero-sum game, there's got to be another way, and what is it? And he wrote a letter to a friend of his who was a judge on the Minnesota Supreme Court, and that started this whole movement called collaborative law. So how does collaborative law contrast with adversarial litigation? Collaborative law is the complete reversal of adversarial litigation. Number one, in every divorce case, you go through phases of, first of all, engaging with the process and learning what it's like. Number two, you gather information. Number three, you then take that information and you have issues, things that have to be decided, decision points. And then you have to go through various options and figure out, well, what is going to be the best solution? In the adversarial system, it's fight, fight, fight at every stage. In collaborative law, as I said, it's the complete opposite. How does it get to be different? First of all, it's voluntary. The parties, usually through the attorney they contact, will find out about collaborative law is a different way to do their divorce or custody case. Lawyers have an ethical obligation to tell clients about all of the options and pathways to get to a court order signed by a judge. In collaborative law, the parties and the attorneys sign a document called a participation agreement. The participation agreement is a very detailed document that says that this is how we're going to do things. And it forms a container. And the structure of the container is one that makes it safe to do things without fear that you're going to get hurt by making disclosures. As the model developed, lawyers came to realize that they needed others to assist the process. And so now, typically, at least in Texas, and it varies from one state to another, the lawyers will engage a mental health professional person as a neutral. And that person becomes facilitator of the process. So the lawyers are not they're not facilitating the process, the mental health professional is. Now, the mental health professional is not there to provide therapeutic services. They're not in a therapeutic role. But they do have the value of looking at the relationships through the lens of psychology. And oftentimes mental health professional will have a lot of knowledge about child developmental needs and can serve as a neutral expert to assist the parents in their decision making with regard to how they want to handle raising the children living in separate households. And then in especially in divorce cases, less so in custody cases, you'll have a neutral financial professional who will assist the parties in dealing with financial issues. Now, one of the things that drives up the cost in adversarial litigation is that you don't have these neutrals. Instead, each side, if they need experts, will hire their own expert, and it's kind of like the expert who's a hired gun, and then you have a battle of the experts. In litigation, you also get information through formal discovery, which is very expensive, very tedious, and drives up the cost of the case. In collaborative, the participation agreement says we are going to voluntarily exchange all information that's material and relevant to what we're talking about. You don't have to ask for it. We're going to give it to the team. In collaborative, the professionals, this would typically be two lawyers, a mental health professional neutral, as I mentioned, and a financial professional neutral, would act as the professional team. The function and purpose of the professional team is to help the parties go through a information gathering, decision making process. Everyone is there in a role, a specialized role, but everyone is also a facilitator. And that facilitation means helping the parties reach an agreement. Another major distinction is that the collaborative law process is centered on the clients. It's client-centered. In litigation, clients think they're going to have their day in court, but that's an illusion. It's not their day in court. It's the lawyer's day in court. It's the judge's day in court. They're on the sideline watching, the show go on. Other people are talking about things of great interest to them where they're sitting on the sideline watching it happen. In collaborative, the clients are at the center of the process at every stage. And so they're in collaborative, we have a roadmap in which we start out by getting everybody oriented to this new and different type of way, this process, this way of handling conflict and its resolution. And then we go through a stage of gathering information. And then following that, after you gather information, you say, well, here are the things that are decision points. Now, what are the various options? What are the various ways we can deal with this? And then you go through the various options and work through that and hopefully come down to the option that is optimal for satisfying the interest, the needs, the goals, and the values of each of the two parties. So we're not a zero-sum game. Rather, we want to expand the pie through creative problem solving. We do that because we ask the clients, because oftentimes people feel their interest, but they can't speak it. So part of the value of the professional team is to help people put down in writing, what are my true interests? What are my needs? What are my concerns? What are my values that I want to protect? And once you have that valuable information, then the team can support the decision-making process so that each party feels like I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got the things that were most important to me. I got most of my interest and my needs satisfied. The lawyers in collaborative law are committed to getting an agreement. And the participation agreement has something called opting out. And what this means is that if this voluntary process is ended, and anybody can end it, if it breaks down and it's not working, the parties or the lawyers. But if it is ended without an agreement, the lawyers cannot represent those parties in litigation. This is a very important feature. Why? Because you don't want lawyers, which often happens in adversarial litigation, playing a negotiation game that is hard-nosed, power-driven, making it difficult to get to agreement. Why? Because it drives up the billing. They can subtly sabotage the negotiation process. If there's no gain by sabotaging the process in collaborative and kicking it out and then litigating it in court, it takes away any motivation that might exist in somebody's mind to play that game. Now, most of the professionals, the lawyers who go into collaborative law, go through basic training and advanced training, and then they work with other professionals and learn from the practice of other professionals. So it's a learning community. And in that process, lawyers, especially lawyers, must make a mind shift. What is that mind shift? They've come through law school. They've learned how to research the law. They've learned how to write briefs. They've learned how to make oral arguments, and it's all adversarial. I've got to win for my client. That's the mindset most lawyers come out, that when you come out of law school, that's the mindset most lawyers have, because that's how they've been trained. This is what we do. This is what we're supposed to do. Collaborative law, you've got to shed that mindset and get a new mindset. And the new mindset is one of being a collaborative, creative problem solver for the benefit of the clients.
So let me ask you, Richard, about that part of the process. Then, it changes the tone of the conversation, right?
Tone is very important. You see, what I've experienced in my practice is that lawyers are trained to deal with legal issues. But people who are in a family relationship don't think about legal issues. You don't manage your family relationships by thinking about legal issues. You manage it in a very different way. You manage your relationships. Well, sometimes there's harmony, sometimes there's some friction, sometimes people, and there's friction in every family. There's no conflict-free family. Every family's going to have it. The big question, how do I handle the conflict? So people maybe have bitter feelings, maybe they have hurt feelings, they may have a lot of negative emotions. The collaborative process is a safe container for those negative emotions. And so the tone is one of, whatever your negative emotion is, it's okay to express it here. But then let's get to the bottom of it. So the whole tone is one of acceptance of the person as they are, but then helping them shift their point of view. That's what the process does. So it has an element of what we would say is compassion. Compassion is, you may not agree with what the other person is saying or doing, but you sort of understand, you can put yourself in their position and walk in their shoes a little bit and have compassion for them.
And it becomes a much more respectful way of handling the process, right?
Absolutely. Respect is at the core of it. Respect, compassion. It's not necessarily, it's kind, but that doesn't mean it's kumbaya. Everybody's suddenly going to like one another. It's not necessarily we're friends now, but it does have that foundation of mutual respect. And it supports the building of mutual respect, and it supports the building of trust. Because when people come out of a divorcing process or come out of a custody fight, you want them to have a higher level of trust. The professionals are not going to be, thank God, in their life forever, billing forever. Clients are especially interested in that last piece. And so they're learning new ways to handle their conflicts and get a resolution on their own without having to get professionals or the courts involved. And this is where we want them to be.
So we're doing this podcast in advance of Divorce with Respect Week, which is coming up March 1st through 8th. And during Divorce with Respect Week, people can contact you or other collaborative professionals, the divorce coaches or mental health professionals, financial professionals, to get questions answered about the divorce process and about the collaborative process. If someone schedules a consultation with you, what can they expect to learn?
Well, first of all, there's no upfront fee, and there's no obligation to hire. We want in our consultation to first get acquainted with the person and know why they have a problem in their life that is seeking some kind of legal help. And once we learn that, then we can figure out, okay, as a lawyer, this is what you need from the legal system, which is basically you're going to have to get to some kind of a court order. Then we can do what I'm doing in this podcast is contrast for them and inform them about collaborative law and why they're going to be better served by voluntarily stepping into this collaborative law container versus trying to duke it out in court with a war of words. And in terms of cost, nobody ever really knows. Nobody knows when you start a lawsuit what it's going to cost you because there are too many moves on the chessboard. And so it's difficult also in collaborative law to estimate the cost. Now, you do have 4 professionals at the very beginning. And so, unfortunately, there are a number of people who just don't have the resources to have 4 people involved. Even though collaborative would be better for them, they don't have the resources. So I don't know. We don't know how to answer that problem.
But it's still, but even with those other professionals involved, their hourly rate is well below the rates of the attorneys, and so economically, it's more efficient, right?
I think so because the lawyers want the neutrals to work with the clients without lawyers being present. And so oftentimes clients, they work with a mental health professional on, say, child issues and a parenting plan, and they work with a financial professional offline without the lawyers on financial issues. And oftentimes they get close to or come to an agreement. And then the lawyers come in and say, yeah, that from a legal standpoint looks okay, or you might fine tune it. But you're right. The process can work with a lot of the time spent not with all 4, but offline, so to speak, with either one of those neutrals. I will say that in the collaborative process, decisions are made in joint meetings, the clients, the lawyers, and the neutrals. But there's a whole workup by the professional team to get there. We have an agenda, so everybody knows what we're going to talk about. We have a time limit. It's a very business-like structure.
So if someone wants to learn more about you, Richard, or reach out to you directly, what's the best way to get a hold of you and to learn more about you?
Well, our website is shannonfamilylaw.com. And also they can email us at richard@shannonfamilylaw.com. And they can telephone us at 512-733-8259. So that phone number again is 512-733-8259.
And we will put all of that information in the show notes as well, with links to the website. Richard, thanks for joining us today on the Respectful Divorce Podcast.
Well, I would say as a final parting word, Tim, because I'm chairing a team, an innovation team, looking at how the collaborative model has been adopted over this past 25 years. And what we found out is that it's spread far and wide throughout the 50 states and actually in some 26 foreign countries. But use in the marketplace so far has been pretty veneer thin. We want to see this grow to, I would think it's conceivable it could be as much as 40% of cases or more could go into this process. So we're not only looking to build our own individual practice, most of us who work in this arena are wanting to advance what we call a movement, the collaborative law movement, so that the public comes to demand the collaborative law approach.
All right. Well, again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching the Respectful Divorce Podcast. This important programming note that Divorce with Respect Week is coming up March 1st through 8th. During Divorce with Respect Week, you can talk to lawyers, divorce coaches, and divorce financial experts for free to learn more about the divorce process and your options. Simply go to divorcewithrespectweek.com to find participating professionals near you. Divorce with Respect Week, March 1st through 8th. For more information, that's divorcewithrespectweek.com. I'm Tim Crouch for the Respectful Divorce Podcast, reminding you that collaborative divorce is a better way to untie the knot.